How you doing, guys? Emilio here. Just wanted to do a follow-up video from the first and give you all not just an update on where I am, but to answer a few of the questions or comments that were raised in the first video. One of the comments I wanted to address was relating to the specifics of my surgery. So what I've got here is the surgeon's operation note relating to what his direction was, which was a right wrist arthroscopy, excision of volar ganglion, and decompression of first dorsal compartment and intersection. Now, that was all within the core focus of resolving a full thickness TFCC tear, as well as a ganglion in my wrist. So the first video that I posted, for those of you just tuning in for the first time, kind of goes over what my experience was with the first surgery and what my results were. So I won't go over that again in this one, but I'll leave the link to the first one underneath. Today I wanted to talk to you about what my current risk MRI has illustrated, which is that there is a persisting linear high signal TFCC tear towards the radial attachment. There's no evidence of repair at this site, which means that it's a persisting tear from the previous injury. Now, if that is the case, then it means my surgeon missed the tear during the first inspection, and so it's now another reason why I may have to end up having surgery again. I'm still taking the human growth hormones, which I'll do another video of. In that video I'll be telling you about what I'm taking, how I take it, and how often I take it, and also where I sourced it. One of the other questions that was asked in the previous video was, where do I reside? I'm in West Australia, and so a lot of the information I'm going to give you is sort of relevant to where I am, where you are, particularly the types of splints that get issued to you might be different, the process might be different. So this is more so relating to what it's like where I'm located based on the services available to me for my injury. One of the other questions that we had from the previous video was, what type of splint did I have? So this is the final stage of the splint that I had. So be mindful that it's been modified many times. It's a thermoplaster splint. So basically it comes as a flat plastic sheet. They put it in hot water, and after it's heated up, they put it over your arm, and it molds into what they need it to become. So essentially it's strap, 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 and this is how they do it in WA. So the site of my operation is here, and they leave this portion of it exposed with the splint protruding past to prevent it from having any access or impact to any surfaces. This is good and bad. It's good, A, because it does alleviate any pressure on the wounded area or the recently operated on area. But it's bad because the design of the splint causes issues, which I did briefly cover in the first video, but I'll go through it with you now as well. So the original splint goes all the way up the arm, just below the bicep. So past the elbow, just below the bicep. And it has another strap, which comes along and goes over like this to prevent your forearm from dropping down. So essentially they want you to keep it in an elevated position, and that strap kind of does do that. It does work in a way, but it puts a lot of pressure in the back of your elbow as the supporting structure to keep your forearm elevated. The other problem with it, or well, the design function with it, the reason it goes behind your elbow is they want to prevent this sort of action because it activates the TFCC, and they want absolutely no movement within the first 6 weeks. So the problem that I had with this design, where it overlaps over this portion of the forearm, is that it touches, because it protrudes past your elbow, it's the first thing to touch the surface. When it does, it pushes up into your wrist and into the area that you've had surgery on. So it's an aggravating sort of injury post-surgery, and it's very easy with this design to continue to aggravate it and make it difficult for you to find a comfortable way to manage it. So for those of you who are thinking about having the surgery and you do reside in Australia, this is more than likely the type of design that you're going to have to come across. And if you do, be mindful that when you have the splint made, to ask them, although it does have to come up to the elbow, to ask them not to let it protrude past the elbow, and it's going to save you a lot of discomfort and hassles along the way. So that's the final version of the splint. This gets cut down to this portion, just down to the forearm after 6 weeks. Your surgeon might want to do that in a 4-week period, but for me it was 6 weeks because I had complications. After the 6-week mark, I wore it for a following 2 to 3 weeks, so a total of about 8 or 9 weeks since the operation. And I did that because I didn't want to risk injuring it or aggravating it when I was asleep, rolling over and then tucking it underneath my arm, laying on it. I didn't want to risk re-aggravating it so soon after surgery. So I wore it for about 8 or 9 weeks. My experience wearing the splint in relation to what you can and can't do, if you're left-handed or if you're ambidextrous, it's not going to have a real big issue on you using a computer other than having to touch type with one hand, of course, but you can use the mouse in your dominant hand if it is normal for you. But aside from that, you can do absolutely nothing with your hand or your arm. No driving, no manual labors of any kind. I did watch some videos where some guys had just had this operation, were in a full cast and were still going back to sort of retail type roles. Now, if you're under restricted duties and your manager allows you that sort of access, then so be it. But I would recommend absolutely no use, no movement of this hand whatsoever that you've had surgery on, because it is cartilage we're talking about, it's not bone, and any sort of re-aggravation or re-movement in that area will reopen the wound quite quickly. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on that. One of the other things that was raised in the request was, where am I at the moment? So at the moment I had a GP appointment with a new doctor to review my entire case. He reviewed 2 different surgeons' notes, and he did an assessment on my wrist. So I can't actually do it because you have to be relaxed when they check it. But they basically look at the 2 top points of the bone that connect your hand to your wrist, and they jiggle it. And they see what sort of flexion, what sort of movement, mobility you have in there. It should be quite rigid. A healthy wrist in this portion should be quite rigid. Mine is highly mobile, and that in itself is a problem. So based on that alone and the other identifiable issues, it's likely that I'm a good candidate for more surgery. So it's not great news. It's not what I wanted to hear myself, and it's certainly not what I wanted to sort of portray to the hopefuls out there who are trying to avoid it. But the notes for my most recent MRI say that there is a resolved ganglion in the volar radial aspect of the radiocarpal joint, which is where I had the original one before surgery. The persisting high TFCC tear, and that one was the one without evidence of surgery, so it's either there from the beginning or they've missed it. There's a new transversely orientated tear of the dorsal scapholunate ligament with increased size of dorsal scapholunate ganglion, which is 10 by 2 by 2 millimeters. And there's a new chondral wear over the proximal pole of the hamate. That there, the way it was described to me was there's cartilage or ligament in here that's being rubbed against by a piece of my bone. That is another identifier that the GP noticed that would require surgery sooner than later. Reason being is, for as long as my bone keeps rubbing against it, it's going to wear it down. And the last MRI that was done for me indicated that there was already a fair bit of thinning happening in that particular area. So again, it's unfortunate news, but it's looking like I'm going to have to go back under the knife, and it is what it is. The human growth hormones to date haven't really made any significant improvements to my symptoms, so there's nothing really there to illustrate that it's working or it's not working. I haven't had a scan to sort of prove it either way, but in relation to my actual symptoms myself, what I can feel, what I've noticed, there hasn't been a great deal of difference, and I'm on my 3rd out of 5 vials. But again, I'll do another video separate for that, because that's a bit of a lengthy explanation for that in itself. As always, guys, if you have any questions that I haven't answered, please write them down below. If I can't do it in writing, what I'll do is I'll post up another video and give a more thorough explanation for that as we go. If anybody has any suggestions, even for me, in relation to what they've done and what they've tried, I'd love to hear about it. I'd love to know about it before making the final decision to go under the knife. But if in fact I do, of course, I'll be creating more content to show you guys what happens in 2018 in this current stage in relation to this injury and how we deal with it here. So otherwise, all the best guys. I wish you the best of luck.